Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we're talking about the Freedom Trucker Convoy, not only in Ottawa, Canada, but also here in the United States, because we're seeing a lot of activity, a lot of murmurs out there that the convoy protest to DC is also starting. And so as we go through the show today, we're taking a look at what's happening in Canada and watching our hearts break for the people there and for sort of the idea of democracy and the ability to be free and protest and stand outside in a public space and air your grievances at the government. Well, that was all something that used to be allowed in Canada, not so much anymore. And so we're going to go through that in detail, get up to speed on exactly what's happening in Ottawa. The Ottawa police today came out and sent a number of ominous tweets to the protesters. This morning, they were saying that they wanted them to leave or they were going to be arrested. And they kept posting this tweet several times throughout the day. And we're going to see what they were doing specifically. So I've got a couple maps that we're going to go through that sort of detail the police with this sort of suffocation strategy, right? They're going to be creating these walls of police officers that they are crashing down upon certain areas in the city to try to sort of suffocate the Freedom Convoy so that people will leave. We'll take a look at that. We're going to hear from Police Chief Bell. Remember that Police Chief Peter Slawley has resigned. I have not made a video on that yet, but there's one queued up, I promise. But now we've got Police Chief Interim Chief Bell, who is now going to be detailing the different checkpoints that they're setting up around the city to stop the Freedom Trucker Convoy from bringing supplies in and sort of going and navigating around the different areas of Ottawa. We've got a lot of clips from Trudeau. We've got the Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland. She's the woman who's out there basically saying that we're going to use every single lever of power that we can to gain control of this situation, saying that they're going to be now going after the crypto accounts, seizing funds in bank accounts, going after insurance providers, and the litany goes on and on. So we're going to hear from her, and we're also going to hear from Trudeau's Justice Minister, somebody who's sort of in charge of justice for his administration, saying that some of the people who might be the subject of the government's ire are Trump supporters. Yeah, because that's kind of what this thing has turned into, right? A political back and forth, no negotiation, identifying your political opponents as insurrectionists, as terrorists, as enemies of the state, and then using the power of your position to exclude them indefinitely, to mischaracterize them, and then to use that to your advantage well into the future. So he's out there blaming a bunch of Trump supporters. Meanwhile, we've got actual arrests taking place. Some of the organizers of the Freedom Trucker Convoy are being arrested. A woman named Tamara Lich. I've got some video footage showing what happened with her. Freedom Convoy still promising to hold the line. And so we're going to be spending a little bit of time going through what's happening on the ground. But I also want to diverge for a quick bit to go back to this guy, Klaus Schwab. Remember the guy from the World Economic Forum? We talked a lot about him. I came across a very interesting clip on Twitter. And this is a clip from 2017 where Klaus Schwab was saying that he basically penetrated Justin Trudeau. I'm not kidding about that. He said that. He said he penetrated him. I don't know what that means, but he penetrated him, probably penetrated his cabinet. And so there's just a lot of penetration going on in Justin Trudeau's administration. And Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum is somebody who sounds like he's doing a lot of the penetration. So once we take a look at that, we're going to review what some people say can be done now that this Emergency Act has been into effect, talking to some Canadian lawyers who are describing some tactics that they can use to really combat this Emergencies Act. And so I'm watching this here as a United States citizen saying, this is very curious. We're watching sort of what was supposed to be a liberal democracy there crumble day after day. We see that Justin Trudeau, who marched with BLM, who ranted out about, all sorts of travesties throughout the rest of the world, now saying that people who are oppositional to him are enemies of the state. And so that is something that we are going to dive into at great length to see if there's anything that can be done. Doesn't sound like there's much. But then we're going to change gears and come back home to the United States. Domestically, we're going to take a look at what's happening here, because there were a lot of rumors that there was going to be a Freedom Trucker Convoy or a convoy to DC or the People's Convoy. There's a lot of different organizations and sort of groups that are materializing throughout the United States. and it's all been sort of, in motion. But it sounds like there's a date coming up, and we have an official announcement. I have a clip from somebody who is going to be revealing what the plan is for the United States convoy. And a convoy to D.C. sounds like it might be starting very soon, even next week on February 23rd, with the idea to arrive in D.C. on March 1st. And so if that's going to be happening here in the United States, well, you're going to see a response from our local law enforcement and the feds. And we already are seeing that. The Daily Mail was reporting that several, there were tweets and an article from the Daily Mail. Two things were happening. Number one, that the police are not going on vacation, right? They're going to be sort of rounding up in DC. If you're a Metro DC police officer, you don't get to go on vacation anymore, at least not for March, because we're going to need you when the Freedom Convoy lands in DC. And number two, saying that we need some National Guard, actually. And so there's some tweets bouncing around on Twitter. Some of the intelligence is saying that, well, there is going to be a massive protest in DC. We're going to need the National Guard here to deal with this. We've got a lot to get to, including sort of doing some of the deep dive review on really who is behind the People's Convoy. And so, my goodness, you can see all the bullet points in the description. It's going to be a show. And so if you want to be a part of the program, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got people chatting away over there. Vienticus Prime, of course. Free Mind. We have Three Girlies is in the house. Kincaid, Radice, Cat West is here. And so they're all chatting away. You can also support the show by becoming a member on YouTube. If you are a member, you get to use some fancy gifts. We have the special Trucker Convoy gift down there in the bottom left. We have the Canadian Freedom flag here, also as a member perk. If you're a member, you get different community badges as sort of the longer you're a member, your badges tier up. Super easy to join if you hit that join button right next to the subscribe button. And so that would just make my day if you decided to do that. So thanks for doing it. All right. And so without any further ado, let's get started. The Ottawa police gave an ominous warning today, 8:03 a.m., February 18th. They posted this on Twitter. Says, demonstrators, you must leave. You must cease further unlawful activity and immediately remove your vehicle and property from all unlawful protest site. Anyone within the unlawful protest site may be arrested. Now, I noticed this, okay? I sort of noticed these things. May is here, so you may be arrested. Oh, maybe not. So maybe you don't leave. But then down here in the image, it says anyone found within the zone will be arrested. Oh, okay. So we got a little bit of a conflicting message there. You may be arrested or you will be arrested. Turns out they are actually arresting people. And so we're going to take a look at what's happening here. But I want to show you this line. This is what the police are doing. They are forming this line all around the streets of Ottawa. And so you're probably very likely going to see some similar tactics here emerging in the United States if this sort of materializes. And I have no reason to doubt that it won't. Here you can see on the left, we've got some freedom-loving, sort of Canadian patriots with a Canadian flag who have their faces exposed, right? They're just standing there. They, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I stand for. And now, after that, what we have on the other side is a bunch of, armed up police officers, faces covered. They don't want to experience the, the public outing, or I don't know. So here you can see, this is what it looks like on the streets of Ottawa in Canada. Beautiful. So this is the goal of what the Ottawa police are trying to do. And so you can see, if we zoom in on this map, they have sort of this red zone that they've established. They've got what they call the secured area. And within that secured area, they're sort of trying to develop a perimeter around that area. I was watching Viva Fry, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber neighbor on Locals. He is somebody who was there, and he was sort of pointing out that there were different fencing, new fences were sort of appearing all over the place because they're trying to create these choke points where people have to sort of, in order to get into the area, they have to bypass a checkpoint. They have to bypass a police, entourage just to verify that they're allowed to go into their own city. This is sort of, martial law, lockdown to the maximum degree. And here is the new interim police chief. This guy's name is Bell. Steve Bell replaced Peter Slawley. Peter Slawley was the former police chief. He had the three-part plan, and a lot of the people in the Ottawa City Council were very angry with him for not just going out there and, eliminating all of the Freedom Trucker protesters. And so this is what Art Bell is, this is how he's describing what they're setting up. These are the various checkpoints that they're going to be unrolling.
Downtown, how are these going to work? I've been seeing some reports that people are just asking, oh, why are you going down? Okay, go ahead. So what's going to be stopping protesters from just lying and saying they work downtown or they live downtown?
So as we indicated, we have over 100 checkpoints in this secure area that we've established. Officers are continuing to be informed of the lawful reasons, how they can stop and challenge people, and then looking to ensure that people are entering the area who live there, who work there, or who have a lawful reason,
show me your
such
papers,
as a medical appointment to attend there. Our officers have that information and are intervening on people who
show me your papers.
are not supposed to be there, stopping them, and allowing people that should be there their lawful right to move around in those areas.
Yeah, so you really don't have freedom of movement anymore. You know, it's kind of not an open and free city anymore. You have to, you checkpoints, you've got to show them your papers. Oh, I live here, I'm a citizen here, you know, and so they let you in. And so it's kind of, you know, it's like they like lockdowns. And so this is it. I guess they're very excited about this. But this is kind of, you know, shocking. He's saying basically we're going to try to coach our police officers to give them every single available tool. And remember, they have a lot more of those tools now. Those tools sort of got expanded after they unveiled the Emergency Act. So they have all, you know, here in the United States, right? I'm not a Canadian lawyer, but you just can't pull somebody over for no reason, right? You got to have probable cause or reasonable suspicion to stop somebody and then conduct an arrest. There's all these different standards. But when you sort of say, oh, it's a real big crisis right now, we're super freaked out about this, well, you can just get rid of all of those things that afford people their liberty, afford people things like due process, because you sort of say, well, our interests are more important than your interests. Okay. Us saying that you should be locked in your homes, us requiring you to get mandated to go do all of these things is more important than your interests. And so Bell is saying, you know, those things that we used to cherish as a liberal democracy are sort of evaporated. And what we're going to be doing now is educating our police officers to say, you have these new tools, go use them. Now you're allowed to just go stop somebody and interrogate them for whatever reason you desire, because Justin the tyrant Trudeau decided that power now exists. And because it is such a power, you know, such a dangerous situation, the insurrectionists are taking over. Okay, they have even decided they're not even going to talk about it in Congress. They're not going to debate it at the Canadian Parliament. Here is what came out from the House of Commons. They posted this today. They said, oh, you know, because of what we're doing, the House is not going to sit this Friday on February 18th. They say, as per the Parliamentary Protective Services and their most recent email notification, a police operation is expected to take place on Wellington Street and other areas around the downtown core of Ottawa. Given these exceptional circumstances that they created, and following a discussion with all recognized party leadership, the sitting today is canceled. So if you were somebody who wanted to go in, right? So, you know, one of the objections here would be, well, just call your congressperson, right? In the United States, well, just call your parliamentarian, or whatever they call them there, and just tell them to go and complain about this and go make their voice heard in the next parliament session. Well, there isn't one because of the rollout operation that they are using under the new emergencies powers. They're now causing such a disruption that you can't even call your parliamentarian person, your representative, and tell them to go into Congress and make objections, because there isn't anything going on. There is no Parliament session. We wish to remind everyone that safety is paramount. The situation is ever changing. The continued presence of vehicles and demonstrators associated with the convoy will impact the downtown core. If you're not in the House of Commons, stay away from the downtown until further notice and await further instructions, honorable whoever. All right, so they're not going to even go in there and debate it. So they're just, I guess, canceling sessions. So new Emergency Act, put that into play. Anybody who's going to object to it, well, we'll hear from you in Parliament. We'll have open and free civil debate about this. But not anymore, because what we have decided to do using the new Emergency Act is causing such a downtown ruckus that we just have to cancel the whole thing so nobody can debate about it. What a scam, right? I mean, it's literally what dictators do. It's sort of they, cancel elections and, oh, we can't talk about this stuff anymore. It's too dangerous. And so I just have to take order and take control. What a joke. So here now we see Justin Trudeau posting this. He posted this actually yesterday, still going on saying that these blockades are illegal. It's a threat to our economy, our supply chains. I mean, the inability for this guy to see that his own policies are causing greater harms to his economy and supply chains than the truckers are is just shocking. The threat, he says they're a threat to public safety and they're a threat to communities. This needs to end, or they need to end. What? They need to end? Not this needs to end, but they need to end. Is that a death threat? He says to deal with the current threats, our government is invoking the act. Now, we've already known that. The scope of the act is limited. It gives, this is what I wanted to point out, it gives law enforcement agencies more tools to restore public order. And if they get more tools, that means that you get less, right? Because you have more tools for yourself to sort of protect yourself and to hold that line of liberty. And they just, well, you don't need those anymore. Well, I think I do. You know, I think I still deserve to be able to go out there and speak out against my country if they're doing something that I have a grievance about. Oh, no, you don't need that anymore. That's ours now. And so we have additional tools to go conduct arrests and to stop you from traveling and to really make your life pretty miserable by going after your bank account and canceling your insurance and ruining your license and wrecking your livelihood more than they've already done for many of these truckers. Here is what Justin Trudeau is saying. This was him when the House was in order. This was back yesterday on the 17th when they were still a functional government there, before they started canceling the debate. Illegal blockades, he says they're a threat. Let's listen to this lunatic.
The blockades and occupations are illegal. They're a threat to our economy and relationship with trading partners. They're a threat to supply chains and the availability of essential goods like food and medicine. And they're a threat to public safety. La loi sur les mesures d'urgence va être limitée dans le temps et ciblée pour répondre aux menaces des occupations et des barrages.
I thought I got rid of that French stuff. All right, so we'll just skip past it. You've already heard enough of him. He is doing the same thing, right? Doubling, tripling down on this. And it's not just him. He goes out and gives the marching orders at the top, and the rest of his deputies go out there and they follow in line. I mentioned this at the start of the show. This is Justin Trudeau's justice minister. Okay, so somebody who's supposed to be, I guess, enacting justice somewhere out throughout Canada. Haven't seen a lot of that going on as of late. But here is what he's now talking about. Remember, under this new Emergency Act, they have all these new tools that Justin Trudeau was just talking about. One of those tools is the ability to go in there and just sort of go after people who've even donated to the truckers, okay? Not the people who are there in Ottawa, all right? Not the people who are standing there physically on the ground. The people who are funding them, the people who are donating to them are now under the scope of the government. They're under the purview of this thing. Why? Because they're funding insurrectionists. They're funding terrorists. They're funding this foreign invading force that has come from the United States or wherever. And this is where they're starting to really reveal their true colors. I mean, they've been doing this whole time. We know who they are, as Rush Limbaugh used to say. This guy, though, is going to be sort of just letting it all hang out there, saying, you know, look, these Trumpers, those MAGA people, they better be really worried, because that's what this is all about. It's not about, you know, public safety. It's not about, proper COVID regulations or protocols. It's about a political war, castigating an entire opposition, making sure that these types of protests are not seen as effective. My goodness, what if it's effective? What if Canada bows down to this or negotiates and these things prop up all over the rest of the world? Well, governments then are going to be on their heels dealing with this. And so there is a tremendous pressure to break this thing in Canada before it spreads and catches hold. And so they are just sort of identifying all of their political opponents. Anybody who is sort of, not with the mainstream is a right winger, somebody who is, I guess, Nazis, according to Trudeau, waving swastikas around. All right. So here is the Minister of Justice going after the Trumpers.
Look, you've just compared people who may have donated to this to the same people who are funding maybe a terrorist. I just want to be clear here, sir. This is really important. A lot of folks say, look, I just don't like your vaccine mandates and I donated to this. Now it's illegal. Should I be worried that the bank can freeze my account? What's your answer to that?
His answer is yes.
Well, I think if you are a member of a pro-Trump movement who's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars to this kind of thing, then you ought to be worried.
Then you ought to be worried. If you're a member of a pro-Trump movement who's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to this thing, yeah, you ought to be worried. Yeah. Yeah, you should. Yeah, we're going to go after your bank accounts, buddy. And we are going to make sure that we can eliminate you and seize those funds and go after your records, because that's how things operate in Canada, right? Invoke the emergency order, stop future debate, go after all your political enemies, use the power of big government to wipe them out financially, reputationally, take away their ability to earn a living, make sure their licenses are no longer good, their freedom to travel is now impaired, their ability to make a living in any way has been evaporated. And so they are totally, screwed, essentially, is what they want. And that is now unrolling in Canada. And it doesn't stop there. Here is the Deputy Prime Minister, right? So the person under Trudeau, her name is Chrystia Freeland. And today she's saying, yeah, we're also going to, suspend your insurance, and we're going to send your semi-trailers home, and we're going to basically seize everything that we want because we gave ourselves the power to do it. In a Western democracy, what an absolute disaster for Canada, for our neighbors up north. Here she is.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns. Are they considered designated people under the Emergencies Act, meaning that their credit cards could be cut and financial services are targeting them as well?
Okay, so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions.
Yep.
And
so,
accounts have been frozen.
Yes.
And more accounts will be frozen. Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack. In terms of the specifics on whose accounts are being frozen, you now have the regulations. The financial service providers have those regulations as well, and they, working with law enforcement, will be making the operational decisions.
So yes, the answer is yes. They are suspending or going after everybody's funds, crypto wallets. They are, even if you're donating, right? That's you're on the list, right? So now what they do with that, right, is a different story. Are they going to go after everybody who donated $100? Do they have any jurisdiction for people in the United States who may have donated to Give, Send, Go? There's a lot of complex issues here. And so she's saying that, they're probably going to want to go after the big fish. If you just think about this from a practical perspective, if you're RCMP, if you're the Canadian government, you're not going to go after a bunch of people who donated $25 a piece. You're going to go after the people who are dropping, 10 grand a whopper. Boom, here you go. Get that guy. Take out the big foundational levers, and that maybe that will cause the most damage to the movement. But after that, who knows, right? Who knows what they're going to do with this? It's really kind of an insane thing where she's saying we're getting everybody's names and numbers and email addresses, and we're going after you. Yeah, we're going after your bank accounts and your records and all that stuff. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of pushback once this thing gets underway, right? They are, I think, instigating something that is sort of, there's call and response, right? Reaction and reaction. And so this action and reaction. And so I think we're going to see, a big movement here. And some of it is going to be in a positive form that the government can no longer control. So if you've been a part of this channel, I've talked a lot about the idea of creating parallel systems, right? To sort of escape the old system by creating new parallel systems that are better, more efficient than the old systems. One of the ones that we've talked about a lot here is, our community, right? Sort of building a community of like-minded people rather than sort of just existing in the world aimlessly without a community. We talk a lot about that at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We talk about, how we can sort of make ourselves more robust against the federal government to make sure that we're creating freedom for ourselves and not being taken advantage of. One of the new, very exciting technologies that I think really lays the foundation for all of this is crypto. You can create these new blockchains and store value on the blockchain and really come up with parallel systems that are better and more efficient than what the current monetary system provides. And it's happening, folks. When the big government like this, when they do this stuff, people are going to figure out alternatives, and it's really going to bootstrap the adoption of this type of technology. I want to share this clip with you. Okay, this guy is a trucker. We're hearing news from all over the place that they are wiping out people's funds, gobbling up different donors' money. And watch what happens here. This guy's sitting here and he gets delivered a nice package that's going to provide a very nice store of value for him. And the government can't do a damn thing about it. Let's listen.
The bottom line is every 2 days we got a scare. Every 2 days there's some BS about top presents and stuff like that going on. Hey, man. How's it going? No. Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
I'm going to give this to you.
Oh, nice.
Remember how I came and gave you some sats?
Yeah.
There's $8,000 of Bitcoin in there.
Oh, in here?
In there. As soon as the bank shut down, we had some big donors that were like, we need to get Bitcoin to these truckers. I'm not kidding you. So keep it safe.
God, you're kidding.
Basically open it up. There's instructions. All you do is do a recovery code. It's going to tell you to download Blue Wallet, which is what the recovery code's for. So it'll be a different wallet than the first one I showed you.
Okay.
Boot it up. It's yours.
Fuck,
Thanks for your service.
That's insane, man. That's ridiculous. No, that's
all right, dude. You came all the way here and you're saving our fucking country. That's ridiculous.
Holy shit, yeah.
That's a thank you from the Bitcoin community.
Holy fuck.
Much love, bro.
Cheats are red, man. That's great.
There you go. I'll see you around.
Love from the Bitcoin community, baby. Woo! Yeah, baby.
Dude. Yeah, so.
Okay, so, yeah, right? Very interesting stuff happening there. So now, that's the Canadian government can't seize that. That is a different way to handle this. And when movements get under pressure from the Canadian government like this, right, they're going to find other ways. They're already doing it. He got delivered an envelope. It's like Mission Impossible. Sir, here you go. He's going to open it up. It's going to scan his retina. It's going to transfer 8K of Bitcoin into his wallet. It's pretty cool. So the trucker convoy, is finding a way. And when these big tyrants, right, we've got control. We're just clamping down on all of these rebels out there. But guess what? They're going to build parallel systems that are more robust, a lot more anti-fragile than any of the other old systems. And so they're basically encouraging people to figure these solutions out. And it's ultimately going to lead to their demise. It's going to be their downfall. They're taking away people's freedom and liberty. People are going to find their freedom and liberty elsewhere, and they're going to secure it. And the government's going to pay the consequence. Here we have some more sad news out of Canada. This is the scene. You see this officer, a hero. I mean, an absolute hero. Look at him. He's like 6'4", arresting like a 5'4" woman. Tamara Lich has been arrested. This took place last night, February 17th at 7:09 p.m. Here's what the scene looked like. And you can just see, a bunch of these heroic officers really doing their duty to protect Canada.
Yes. Are you? I'm good. Talk to you here for a second. Yes. Oh boy. So you're in the place. Okay. Let's ask you back up, sir. Should you guys ask back up, please? Just back up. Thank you.
My coat's
me
wet.
too. And me.
It's wet?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Sean.
I'm not here to arrest you, Sean.
Well, you will be.
It's me.
Why's that?
Because I'm right next there.
If you're going to take her, you got to take me.
You have to.
So just went and just arrested her, I guess. I mean,
We're just as much as
Sir General, don't hear.
a couple arrests happening there.
Yeah, I got you.
Have a good night.
Enjoy yourself. We'll see you soon, Tamara.
Hold the line.
Hold the line. They keep saying it.
Officer, you got to take me too. Stay back.
I hope we got recordings happening. That's the Tamara Lich right there. And I'm Sean.
Okay.
Danny.
Well, I hope I feel safer already.
Can we ask for names and badge numbers?
Was she Al Qaeda?
Officer, can I have your name, please?
Well, yeah.
I'm right here. You're scared.
Another terrorist off the street. That's good. I think she was like Bin Laden's number 2 or something like. So Canada's getting really secure now. They're taking away all these terrorists, and the police. That was last night. They ramped it up this morning, and I'm going to guess that it continues forward over the weekend. And since Parliament's out, there's not going to be anybody to debate or stop any of this. It's all just going to continue to roll on because there's no more government there. It's just Trudeau's government. So today, this is what it looked like. Several good clips over from the Post Millennial, who is sharing a lot of clips from, I think her name is Puffy Puffins, something like that. Very, very great footage. And so let's watch this. You can see the police are gathering steam. They're sort of making these sort of walls, and they're closing in. They're creating that red zone that we talked about at the outset of the show. Let's watch.
We have to.
Okay, pushing people back, creating these lines.
Make the move. Don't think about the group. Think about yourself and your mind. One day you gotta have to engage about your Can you repeat We're not gonna wait. You do your job before you do this, please. But and after two, we work for you guys, for your family. Think about what you do.
We work for you and your family.
Are you agree with that? Okay.
We got police marching through the streets of Ottawa on the Emergency Act.
I just only do my job. Go forward. I only do my job. Go around. Do this for free. It's okay, I'll follow the orders. I only follow the orders. All right, let's make a line two. Let's make a line two then. I only follow the orders. Let's make a line. Let's make a line.
I mean, isn't that martial law?
Everybody, let's make a line.
Right, that's martial law, right? I mean, it's not the military, right? It's not the actual military, but I mean, it's basically military style, right? Sort of, it's. Well, we're going to see a lot more of it. We're going to get to more of the much more military style in a minute, but they're taking over the streets. They've got, personnel in, just following orders, just making sure that they're pushing these people out who are their brothers and sisters, their fellow Canadians. Wild. So we have a couple more clips. Let's go through this. Now, as the police approach, I want to show you what these terrorists are doing. They are plotting, and, they have these vocal cords that, I don't know, might, make somebody, I don't know what this is. Let's listen.
Everyone, make the line.
All right, I turned the volume down just a little bit so we don't blow our ears out with the horns. Of course, I have this thing is buried in my ear, and so the horns, of course, very powerful symbol. I like the beautiful sound, and I've said many times, the honking will continue until freedom improves is one of my most favorite lines of this whole thing. But here you can see what's happening, right? They are encroaching, surrounding the protesters. They are trying to sort of suffocate them. They are condensing the size of the red zone, and they are singing songs. I mean, these terrorists are just singing songs. And if you don't remember, Jim Watson, the mayor of Ottawa, said that the honking of the horns and the loud noises essentially were akin to psychological warfare. And so maybe that's what it is. Now, right, for those people who are like, well, it's just the police, it's not the military, Rob. These are just police officers. They're, it's just like standard riot control stuff. This is the type of stuff that we didn't see for any of the other riots, like BLM or Antifa. Did they roll out these tactics anywhere else? I mean, not here in the United States, they didn't. But I don't know what they did in Canada. I don't think so, because Justin Trudeau was marching with BLM when they toppled. Well, not at that exact protest, but they toppled the McDonald's statue in Canada. So here you can see in the background, now we've got some guys who look like they're in actually, you know, army fatigues, right? They've got some sort of camouflage style hardware. They've got a big Humvee or sort of armored vehicle behind them. They've got some full, you know, I would guess fully automatic AR style weapons. And they look like they've got tactical helmets on. So I don't know what that is, but it looks like it is certainly more analogous to military than anything else. I think it's martial law at this point.
We
don't trust their promises. We don't trust their promises.
Other people here, other tyrants.
Oh, so because he's got a police label on, that means it's not military. Okay. And so if we just do a quick recap, we see that they are bringing in sort of armed soldiers to go against a civilian force. They are using sort of military style tactics of surrounding and suffocating. They are, canceling Congress. So that's good. So there's no further debate about this taking place in Congress. Art Bell is now somebody who is going to be unrolling a whole new slew of tools for law enforcement to stop people from moving around. They're going after people's credit cards, bank accounts, crypto wallets, seizing everybody's financial records, trying to cancel licenses, insurance providers, trying to go after everybody's entire families, essentially, right? It's like the mob goes after, take them all out. And that's what's happening. Now, also, if you're going to, sort of unroll a new dictatorship, one of the big things you want to do is make sure there's no media who gets to see what you do. So as you're canceling the government, function happening in Parliament, you also want to make sure the media can't really see what your misdeeds look like. Otherwise, they'll expose it theoretically, except the media in this case is really on their side. But they don't want a lot of sort of independent journalists or anybody else to see what they're doing. And so Ottawa police, in conjunction with some other principles of dictatorships, is now banning the media from many of these areas. You can see they posted this on their Twitter timeline today at 7:43 a.m. They said, all media who are attending the area, please keep your distance and stay out of police operations for your safety. See, it's about safety, right? Cancel Parliament because of safety. Go after people's private records, safety, stop them from traveling, safety, and no media, no reporting for safety. Anyone found within areas undergoing enforcement may be subject to arrest. So you journalists out there at the CBC who are really excited about exposing corruption and tyranny and all that garbage that you tend to pretend to care about, this is actual limitations on what we would call here our First Amendment rights. You can't go into an area to watch what's happening. What a scam. It says there will be a media availability later today at Elgin Street. So you can go exactly where we want you to go, and that's it. So you also got to make sure the media is canceled. This woman got to experience it. She's with Rebel News. Her name is Alexandra Lavoie. The voice for the people who can't be heard, French journalist for Rebel News Online. And I got to tell you, man, the Rebel News crew, the people who are putting this organization together, are doing just an amazing job. They've got, I don't know how many reporters they've got or how their organization works, but they've got so many people out there just recording imagery and sending it back, and they're just cutting it up. I mean, their media game has been really, really good, like really impressive. I'm trying to figure out how they do it. It's so dang good. But here now, we can see exactly what she experienced. She was there, and we saw that the media is now being corralled out from reporting any of the actual news that's going on. This is what it looked like in Canada. Our neighbors, our friends to the north, under total dictatorship now. Let's watch.
Unfortunately, we cannot pass further, but you can see the squad. It's just right there.
You're on the cruiser and tree.
Oh, sorry.
You're on
So
the
what?
cruiser and tree. This tree here, on the cruiser.
Oh.
Okay.
So what is happening?
He won't even look at her. Watch. He won't even talk.
Huh?
Just following
You have
orders.
like 20 car of police. You cannot answer? Or you don't want to answer?
Yeah. NPC police. Ottawa NPC police.
Sir,
just follow
this
an
side
order.
of the tree. You're on the cruiser.
All right. Not
so
much
we cannot
there.
pass further.
Are you going? Where are you going? You go Ottawa? Okay. Take the sidewalk. You can go down the street, okay? Thank you, sir.
Can't even get back there. Now they're arresting people. You're going to hear her
kind
say.
of hard to show the people, but
Would be
today
nice.
a lot of police presence
Thank you.
and further there I think you have some arrestation, but
So arrests are happening.
unfortunately we cannot pass, as you can see.
Can't see anything.
2 police is stopping journalists to pass further, as you can see.
Sorry, I want to.
We can see it's just there. Some people are getting arrested. Some protester, probably some truck driver. We can see with the
Okay, so they're
handcuff.
getting arrested.
Okay. You just looking for a taxi?
All right. So a journalist, somebody would want to go and watch what's happening. I want to make sure that this person's rights are not being violated. I want to speak truth to power. I want to make sure the police are following the guidelines, following the rules. Can't do that because you have to stay back however far away. So there really is no oversight. The police can do whatever they want. Now, I saw this. While that's happening, while they are going after their own citizens, they had the audacity to post this yesterday. Canada did. The Foreign Policy Canada Twitter account, you can see Twitter labels it Canada Government Organization. They posted this February 17, 2022 at 7:52 a.m. They said, Canada condemns Cuba's harsh sentencing following the July 2021 protests. Canada strongly advocates for freedom of expression and the right to peaceful assembly free from intimidation. We stand with the people of Cuba in their aspiration for #democracy. Can you believe this? Their own government posted this. As they're cracking down on their own citizens, they are expressing admiration for the Cuban people who've been oppressed by their leaders, saying we stand for free speech and aspire for democracy. What an absolute scam government. These people are the worst. All right. And so what they really mean, okay, so here they're saying, look, freedom of expression. They want freedom of expression, the right to peaceful assembly, free from intimidation. And they aspire for democracy. Let's see what, so they want that in Cuba. Let's see what they are, let's see what's happening actually in Canada while they're promoting that. Okay. So they got that guy kind of in a, there it goes. Oh, that's nice. So I guess no peaceful assembly there. Okay, so you can see that guy just got gobbled up by the police horde. All of them in masks, all of them without names, all of them with different A41 badges on there, don't know who they are, hiding behind anonymity, hiding behind face masks and sunglasses, and doing the dirty work of a dictator. It's pathetic. I mean, they should all be ashamed of themselves. Basically, NPCs to the maximum degree. Not even a free debate happening in Canada about any of that. And why? Why is this? We've talked about this at the start of the show. Klaus Schwab. That name keeps coming up. I came across a very interesting tweet that brings us back to 2017 when Klaus Schwab, the leader of the World Economic Forum, is somebody who was talking about Justin Trudeau. I go, what? Well, this is weird. This is really relevant. We're trying to figure out why Justin Trudeau might be such a little dictator maniac. Well, it turns out it might be because of this. Klaus Schwab is here, says that, a quick recall, right? This is what this guy looks like. And he is a German engineer and economist, best known as the founder and the executive of the WEF, the World Economic Forum. This is a major organization. We've talked about them before, founded 51 years ago. They have a huge sort of organization. And the way this works, for those of you who do not know, the foundation is funded by its 1,000 member companies. Okay, there's 1,000 member companies, if not more than that. These are global enterprises that have more than $5 billion in turnover, okay? So just take a look at those two numbers. 1,000 companies times sort of 5 billion throughput is a lot of power. We're going to do the math on that in a minute, but this is the same organization that's behind the Great Reset, behind the global redesign. It sees periods of global instability, like the financial crisis and the pandemic, as, quote, windows of opportunity to intensify its efforts. Membership here, you can see very expensive, but it's got 1,000 member companies. And when you do the math on this thing, you can take a look at this. If we take a look at the average GDP of the biggest countries in the world, United States about 20 trillion, China 12 trillion, Japan 4 trillion. Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum, if they were all capped at 5 billion in sort of GDP or throughput, that's $5 trillion of global economic power and throughput that they're in charge of. That would put them essentially higher than Japan in terms of total control, sort of influence over policy. And it's probably significantly more than that, which is why China showed up at the last WEF forum and was bending the knee pretty religiously. Now, this is the clip that I was talking about. This came over from this guy, Majid Nawaz, on Twitter. And here's what he said. The head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, was back there at Harvard, the John F. Kennedy School of Government in 2017. And here's what he says. He says, what we are proud of is that we penetrate the global cabinets of countries with our young global leaders, okay? Young Global Leaders is sort of this program that the World Economic Forum has where they sort of, bring in all of these potential leaders and sort of build them up into these essentially Manchurian candidates and then shove them into different governments around the world. And so that's why when we were talking about Build Back Better, right, it was kind of shocking to see all of those different clips where every single one of these politicians, Germany, Biden, all over the world, every single one of these politicians was just repeating the same stinking sentence like a bunch of trained monkeys. It was embarrassing, right? All of them. Build Back Better. It's like, can you come up with your own ideas, or are you just taking your guides from this guy, World Economic Forum? Turns out they basically were. Why? Because of these young global leaders program. Listen to Klaus Schwab talk about penetrating Trudeau.
And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Mm-hmm. All of them.
But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.
Yep.
So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
It's their people.
And that's true in Argentina, too. Wow.
That guy can't figure out his microphone.
That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the president, with a young global leader. But what is important for me?
Yeah, so they control everybody, right? Trudeau is one of them, and the rest of the people in the cabinet. And so this guy's just penetrating, the entire cabinet and penetrating a lot of them, evidently. And it's a big cause for concern, isn't it? I mean, doesn't Trudeau have a conflict of interest there? Is he more loyal to the World Economic Forum, or is he more loyal to the Canadians that he supposedly represents? Right? Isn't that do you want that in your leaders? I certainly don't. And so this is a big question that was being floated around here. Majid is now asking Spotify why the podcast that he was on, where he discussed this with Joe Rogan, has not been published. He said, I played that video that we just watched of Klaus Schwab live on my censored and never released episode with Joe Rogan 3 weeks ago, where I named Trudeau specifically as a World Economic Forum acolyte and told Rogan I'd met him. Why won't Spotify release it? Sign the petition here at change.org. Right? Why won't they release it? I don't know. It's a good question. Now, I want to share something with you because it's Friday and because it's kind of a heavy news day, something a little bit lighter on this Friday. I know a lot of people are stressed out about what's happening there in Canada, and I understand why, and certainly, right, my thoughts and prayers are with everybody, and I'm praying for everybody's safety. And I think that there is going to be, a long road against tyranny. But I've been somebody who's always been optimistic about this. I think that the human condition tends towards freedom, and that anybody who is trying to cage the human spirit is ultimately going to lose. And you can just look at the course of history. Now, things are often darker before the dawn. There's no question about that. But what we're seeing here is a movement unlike, anything I've ever seen or read about, even, in sort of at least modern times. And it is now gaining steam and spreading wings. And so I still think there's a lot of room for optimism, even though, the government is taking some heavy swings. It's just the beginning, right? This is the first inning of this thing. And there's a long road ahead. And I'm happy to be on it with many of you. But on this lovely Friday, let's take a look at this very fun meme that was bouncing around the internet. And this is the scene from the old German. This is the old German meme. And so if you're listening on audio only, this is going to be pretty painful for about 1 minute and 30 seconds. But this is this is a pretty funny meme with some very fancy graphics that have been passed around. This is a secret recording of Justin Trudeau with his cabinet trying to deal with the truckers. Let's listen.
Es ist dem Feind gelungen, die Front in breiter Form.
All right, so real good stuff, a lot of good stuff. So that guy's over on Twitter at NautPoso, so N-A-U-T Poso, P-O-S-O. He's the creator of that. I, of course, did not create that, but very great. Was able to superimpose. I think that was real. I don't think he made that. He actually got that video from inside Justin Trudeau's bunker, wherever that was. And so a little bit of levity there. Now, there are lawyers who are working on some of this stuff. They are having conversations about what to do and how to fight the Emergencies Act. Let's listen in and see if there is really anything that can be done. And then we're going to talk about what's happening in the United States, because convoys are materializing here back home. Let's listen.
As a Canadian citizen, what are our options?
We're very dependent on our members of parliament in this situation. Talk about how displeased they are with the current situation. And they can notify their MP about how displeased they are. They can write to their MP, or better yet, ask for a meeting with their MP, tell them about how unhappy they are with the Emergencies Act. And there are some mechanisms for MPs to respond. On the one hand, when a public order emergency is declared, within 7 sitting days, it has to go before Parliament, and they can debate it and they can revoke it. But there's also a mechanism under Section 59 of the Act. And what that section says is that if you can get 10 senators to sign a motion saying they want to revoke this act, and if they file that with the Speaker of the House, or alternatively, 20 members of the House can sign a motion and file it with the Speaker of their House.
Okay.
Then this motion has to be debated within 3 sitting days.
Yeah, but they're closed.
On it, and it can be revoked.
He closed it. But it's closed because he created an emergency and said it's an emergency. It's too dangerous to have a conversation about any of this. And so Canada, looks like not good, right? Until they reopen the government, I guess. So it's going to be a big problem. And it's not just limited to Canada. It's also coming down here to the United States. We're starting to see activity now. According to Bowtied Ranger on Twitter, said here today, the DC National Guard just received the order to be prepared to be stood up against the DC trucker convoy beginning Tuesday, February 22nd. The order was issued in response to MPD, which is going to be the Metro PD, I believe, requesting assistance, currently awaiting Secretary of Defense approval. So Lloyd Austin's going to have to take his face shield off and get back to somebody. And you can see here, this is the DC Ranger says, Poso, right? Jack Posobiec is confirming this. So he's sort of, I think he's ex-Navy intelligence or something, and he's hearing the same things. So DC National Guard is now awaiting approval from the Secretary of Defense to determine whether they're going to go out there and sort of, hunker up around DC. We remember they did that after January 6th. And so there's a lot of different protests or convoys that are sort of materializing. And there's a number of different, different names and sort of labels that they're using. And so I just want to talk about it sort of in general, right? They're all sort of happening right around the same time. I've seen several of them. Here is one. This one is at Freedom Convoy USA 22. And what's so beautiful about this whole movement is that there isn't really one, leader of it, right? There's all these different movements, which make it really hard to sort of eliminate, right? It's organic. It's a bunch of different people working together from different parts of the country, different geographic regions, all focused on protecting and preserving their liberty. Here you can see this one is saying it's going to the goal is to arrive in DC March 1st. And so kind of depending on where you're joining, the idea is, put it into Google Maps, see how long it's going to take you to get to DC, and then plan on being there. But they're going to be starting in LA, go up to Salt Lake City in Utah, down to Denver, over Kansas City. We've got St. Louis, 2 stops, Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio, then we get to Maryland, and then land up in DC. And so we might see something very similar to what we're seeing in Ottawa if they do make it there and set up shop. We can see this was the announcement that came out from thepeoplesconvoy.org. And we are going to talk a lot about this because they have a couple big backers, and it sounds like they might have some of their fundraising figured out using crypto. We're going to dive into this a little bit more detail here, but here's the announcement that comes out from the People's Convoy.
Well, actually, I'm super happy to announce on your show, first time here, dropping the start date here. So officially, this is from the top. This is what's happening. We will be launching our convoy February 23rd, Wednesday, February 23rd, beginning in the Barstow area. Routes will be announced within the week exactly. But we are launching February 23rd out of the Barstow, California area, and we will be marching our way east.
So when do you plan on arriving in the swamp? That's the $1 million question.
That is everyone's question. It's going to be a slow go, and we'll be updating as we move along. I just want to make sure it's clear that this is a peaceful protest. Peaceful, reiterate, peaceful, and that we will release those details on our arrival as we narrow it down. We have convoys coming from every direction in the country. We have a main chute coming out of Barstow. There's people coming out of the Northwest, the Southeast, out of Texas, up out of Maine. There are convoys coming from every direction. I'm just one small piece, that's working with a great team of co-organizers. We have state leads. I mean, this is bigger than any person. I'm not the leader by any means of this. I'm just a co-organizer. And we are trying to coordinate that effectively to arrive at the same time while meeting up along the way to grow our convoy.
And, bigger than any one person and really bigger than any one political party. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on some, media and others trying to make this about left-wing politics or right-wing politics when really it's about working-class Americans and what's happening to everyday Americans out there who can't afford to pay.
All right, so he's going to be leading that or co-organizing that. We have the Daily Mail is telling us specifically that Washington, D.C. police, in preparation for this, are canceling all leave for next week. Why? Ottawa-inspired Freedom Convoy. Daily Mail says that the police have nixed the officers' leave preparing for next week, according to sources from the D.C. Police Department. According to the insiders, the department is currently mobilizing hundreds of its officers to spearhead a large response against truck convoys across the nation, poised to travel to the capital next week. Next week, according to the outlet, the forces of 500 officers each day will be formed to comprise civil disturbance units and to quell the planned demonstrations. So it's coming here to the United States. Protests in Canada have remained peaceful, even though Justin Trudeau has been blasted as an authoritarian. The DC response teams, the Capitol Police have prohibited leave. Capitol Police are also booking up. Reports come saying that Facebook shut down the U.S. Freedom Convoy's Facebook page, censoring them, right? So we have the same problems happening here in the United States. And the posts on many of these groups now are, sort of bypassing the bans. So Facebook will shut down their main account, but now they're talking to other trucking groups, okay? So for example, Peter Sorgay posted into this, Talk CDL. CDL is a commercial driver's license. So it's a Talk CDL trucking podcast group, right? It's not a Freedom Convoy group. It's just a regular trucking convoy. It says, please plan ahead and prepare your food pantries. Truckers are planning to go across the country on March 1st to peacefully fight for our freedom. We have another one here. Lori Doherty posting, saying, we're starting on February 23rd. Get your food in order, get your gas. We want to be there March 1st to peacefully fight for our freedom. Another one from Fari says to the Freedom Convoy DC, dates are finalized. Get your flags, posters, cameras, warm clothes. The Canadian convoy took 8 months to plan. We're doing this in a fraction of that, so be patient. Talking about the Spirit of Christ will prevail. So a lot of activity. Also, this is the plan that came out according to the Epoch Times. I think we saw most of this. This is what they're reporting, or this is what they're fighting against. So recall that here in the United States, right, we still have this sort of state of emergency that's going on. This has been something that was unrolled back. So Trump put it into place at the outset of the pandemic. And then when Biden took over, he just extended it. On March 13th, Trump issued this, and now Biden came in and said, we're going to extend this basically indefinitely. You can see that this presidential document is from the National Archives. This was published, the notice, on February 24th. Here, we see more details about this. Other people are going different directions. So now, the first one that we saw was sort of going more northerly on a northern route. This convoy is talking about going across the I-40, which is sort of lower, goes through Arizona, goes through Texas, and some of the other southern states. Multiple groups, they're saying, are going to be joining the convoy as they go to the capital. And this is what their website looks like. And so I wanted to share a little bit of the sort of the research I did here. The People's Convoy are at thepeoplesconvoy.org, I believe is the website. They've already been gathering donations. And so obviously donations has been a big cause of concern based on the fact that the Canadian government is basically seizing money and stopping different banks and financial entities from working with people. But you can donate over here if you'd like. Now, I want to detail a little bit more about sort of what their plan is with the funds. But they do give us a declaration. They say, we the people of the United States, sort of quoting from our documents, they're telling us we are truckers, we're moms, we're students, we're nurses, doctors, investors, county workers, teachers, cowboys, loggers, flight attendants. We are everybody. Fathers, mothers. We're black, white, Asian, Native American. We're immigrants and natives. We are citizens of the free world. To our elected officials, you work for us, they say. Yeah, it'd be nice if they thought that. And they also have a theme song. And so if you want to listen to the full song, go over to thepeoplesconvoy.org. Go check them out. I got about 50 seconds of a 3-minute song, and it's pretty good. Let's listen. He's telling me that's an old song. That's not their theme song. I never heard it before. I thought they just made it for the truckers. I didn't know. I've never heard it before. Cut me some slack. All right. So who is the person who is sort of, behind some of this? This is Mike Landis. Mike Landis is going to give us a little bit of a statement here. I've got a minute from him. He's over on Rumble, and he posted this statement over on the website at thepeoplesconvoy.org. Let's listen.
Hey, everybody. My name's Mike. In case you were wondering, from the People's Convoy. So you may be wondering why we're doing this, okay? For me personally, it's about our freedoms as Americans. I have 2 young sons. It's about what their future is going to look like, and hopefully my grandchildren's. We live in a country that was founded on morals and freedoms. That's the whole reason we came here to America. And everybody that's here is an immigrant in a way, correct? So
yeah,
this isn't just about us as truck drivers or a certain group of people or anything. It's about Americans, as I said. And an American is anyone that is here and loves the Constitution of the United States, has come here, has become an American citizen. It doesn't matter if you came from India, Cuba, Germany, Russia, Poland, China, Japan, Korea, wherever, right? Doesn't matter what you look like, what your skin color is, what your native language is. If you're here and you hold American citizenship, you're an American. We just want to get that clear right now.
All right. So a little message from Mike Landis. Now, I wanted to talk about the funding, right? Because we've seen this come up as a problem. Epoch Times is saying, after seeing the problems with the Canadian convoy and their GoFundMe page, the People's Convoy has now set up 3 different means to receive donations. via credit card, PayPal, or cryptocurrency. So not so sure that I would put all my eggs in the PayPal basket, right? They cancel people like left or right. PayPal actually is really, I think, really bad about that. I'm kind of surprised that that's even on the list. But yeah, different providers, I'm going to imagine that they're all going to be canceled if this turns into something. If it becomes a problem, you're going to be seeing calls for, Stripe and Visa and MasterCard and all the banks to do the same things that they're doing to the Canadians. It's not going to be any different. Same strategies, I'm sure. We have the donations are being handled, though, through the nonprofit called the American Foundation for Civil Liberties and Freedom. And so I wanted to take a look at that group because they're saying that they've got accountants and lawyers that are going to be tracking the funds, while saying their plans are going to be pretty close to the chest. And so I did poke around some of this quickly. Okay, this is on their website. They have the American Foundation for Civil Liberties and Freedom. If you go over to their website, they've actually got a person with his name and his face who's on there, which is, I think, a very reputable sign. I think it's a good sign. Christopher Marston is actually an attorney. He's the board chair, American Foundation for Civil Liberties, 501c4 nonprofit. Serves as the CEO of a number of different companies, says that he's got a tax accounting firm, management consultant. Sounds like he's got, a lot of knowledge with financial and sort of nonprofits type of, legal experience. So good stuff. This is their website, the American Foundation for, this is their Rumble account actually. And so I just wanted to take a quick look, right? They've been actually posting content for quite some time. So May 28th, 2021, and it goes back even further than that. They're talking about the election and voter fraud and all sorts of different stuff like that. So that's a little bit more about them. They're calling for different Senate hearings. And one of the people behind this is this woman, Leigh Dundas, another lawyer, somebody who is over with the America's Frontline Doctors. And I know that sort of group gets castigated a lot by our current media. But according to the Epoch Times, she is a human rights attorney, somebody who is working to sort of combat all of these mandates, and says they're going through the red. So they've got lawyers, they've got a bunch of people who are handling the money. And so if you want to follow them, they are on Telegram at the Convoy to Freedom, right next door to some of our groups down here. And so I want to see what you have to say about this. Let's jump into your questions and comments from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and on YouTube. I saw some of those super chats coming in. And so let me do a refresh here on Locals before we jump into the questions. We had our first one in today actually came from Pierre. Pierre had a question earlier, but it did not show up. Dang it. Did I screenshot that? All right, I'm going to get back to you on that one tomorrow, Pierre. I think I screenshotted that. Not Applicable, with just a ton of super chats. Thank you, Not Applicable. Says, love how the left is the thing they pretend we are, right? Sort of a confession through projection. Also says, abdication. Canada is a dictatorship now. Good job. It certainly looks like that from my seat. Says, Biden and the DNC would end us too if they could. Probably true. And says, we are not the weenies they are used to dealing with. LOL. That was from Not Applicable. We have a couple more on YouTube. We have Mark Owen says, hail Trump, with a nice super chat. Thank you, Mark. Kareem is here. Oh, these are getting backed up a little bit. Kareem is here, says Chrystia Freeland is a huge national embarrassment. I think that is also true. Somebody who is eliminating people's financial freedom, saying they're going after crypto, they're going after their bank accounts, seizing insurance, seizing licenses. Not too good at all. Not Applicable says, this is what it's going to look like when the DNC comes for us. I think that's also true. Delhi 8079 says, I'm so glad that they remain peaceful, unlike the idiots in the U.S. Mad respect to them. I'm not sure. Well, we haven't had our Freedom Trucker Convoy yet. It's starting, though, soon, so we'll see how that goes. Not Applicable says the Democrats will just waste us all with 556, though. I certainly hope not. And Lord Zenu says, Insuret de Quebec. I don't know what that, is that French? I don't speak French, so I apologize on that one. Couple more before we jump to Locals. Kay says, do those who were arrested now have any possible legal recourse under Canadian law? It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a Canadian lawyer. Ordinarily, yeah, right. You've got all sorts of rights that you have when you are unlawfully arrested. You've got different causes of action that you can take against the government. Here we have a concept called habeas corpus, and we have all sorts of different rights and protections that prevent the government from doing those things. But they did it in Canada. And so I don't know what the repercussions are. It sounds like all of the protections they deemed were no longer relevant. And so it kind of sounds like maybe there's a willingness on behalf of the government to bend the line and to manipulate the rules. And that's a scary thing when they do that. Not Applicable says, everyone go get armed up right now. It's not bad advice. Mario Gretzky says, find the video on Rebel from 2020. Alberta Premier admitted Klaus urged him to drastically alter policies and seize the opportunity COVID gave them. I don't doubt that for a minute, right? I think that has happened globally. They all talked about it. Build back better, right? They all, like a bunch of dumb seals, were just repeating the same thing, hoping to get fed by, I guess, Klaus. They wanted to be penetrated. They're all very excited about it for some reason. James Miller says the other person in that clip was David Gergen, who Alex Jones confronted about attending Bohemian Grove. Oh, well, isn't that just swell? So in the clip, it sounds like between Klaus Schwab and the other guy was at the Bohemian Grove with all of the other, world leaders doing their, sacrificial whatever there. Thank you for that, James Miller. Did not realize that. Good one to know. Not Applicable says, heck no, freedom is an anomaly. Defend it as such. So I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sort of be flippant with freedom. Like you can just sort of there's enough people out there that are going to stand up and fight for it. No, I think that there needs to be a very clear delineation. People do need to hold the line, right? I think people need to be speaking and pushing the line, pushing that envelope, because they're pushing the other way. They're pushing to stop it. They're pushing to eliminate it. And so it is a battle, but I think that there's enough in the human spirit and the human condition that it wins, right? It's got more energy than the other side. And it's the side of justice. Not Applicable says, prediction, Biden will drone strike the trucks. Maybe. Ronnie Cole says, Trump said they would have to do everything in a hurry. Well, they are. Yeah, well, they are. They are, because there's a lot of very interesting things happening. I've got another video, I think, on sort of the Trump was right on the spying issue. And we're seeing that the Durham investigation might be turning over some stones that have some pretty interesting things under them. And I'm looking forward to... Oh, Ray Epps is here. Says, it was great seeing you at the FBI Informant Conference in Atlanta. It's good to be there, Ray. I'm glad that we got to connect and talk about, wrecking America. Nadler was excited to meet you there as well. He wanted to thank you for changing his diaper. Well, I can tell you that, Ray. Come on now. Don't joke here on this live show. I'm not going anywhere near Jerry Nadler's diaper, okay? I have no responsibility for that thing. I have been saying on this show for about 2 years now that somebody, well, no, not, I mean, he only came on this show maybe 6 months ago. So let's say, but I did notice his waddling around way before he ever came on the show. And so I was thinking about his diaper, but I just didn't realize. I think it's at 60-something pounds now. Oh, my goodness. Is he here? Is Nadler here? Nadler's belly is here. He says, Rob, if truckers really wanted to make a bold statement, they should refuse to deliver goods to D.C., which is true. I agree with that. And that was Nadler's belly. So let's take a look at some of these comments over here at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got a lot of them. And so let's back up to the beginning. Former LEO says, the more unreasonable the enforcement of laws become, the more reasonable a general strike becomes. I don't understand why all the trade unions don't support the peaceful protest, or possibly I have overestimated the intelligence of the average Canadian. Monster One says, Rob, did you see my predictions coming true on Monday's show? I theorized that Kinzinger talking about a targeted assassination attempts was a dog whistle for someone on the left to do it and then push gun control. Well, after your show, I learned on Tim Pool that a far-left BLM supporter tried to assassinate a mayor in Kentucky. Cherry on top was the guy I was on TV a few years ago talking about forcing gun control. I did not see that, Monster One, although I did see that guy got released on bond. Didn't BLM post a bond for him of $100,000? And he's an attempted assassin, and a judge let him out? Wild. Vienticus says, I encourage everyone to check out a video on Rumble by Better Bachelor about ESG. It's apparently a corporate social credit score system. That's true, right? ESG is like environmental, social, green, I think, or global. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's more tools of control for the global economy. I'm Not Gas says it's year 2022, and the right is calling for a general strike. This is a fun timeline. With regards to future strategy, I think the right needs to stop trying to hold the left to their own standards. They know they are hypocrites. They don't care. The GOP is going to win by a landslide without actually running on a platform besides, quote, we are not the left. We need to start pushing them to take action and start steering this ship back in the right direction, rather than living off simply not being the left. Also, F Trudeau, Biden, WEF, Davos, Five Eyes, and all the quisling, quote, intelligence agencies. From I'm Not Gas, good comment. I agree with that, right? You know, the Republicans, I think, have been basically as useless as the Democrats. What are they doing at all? Nothing, right? And you say, well, they're not in power. Okay, well, they can still be doing things, right? They can still be, you know, investigating people or whatever, sending letters, you know, what I guess that's what they do. But they just are kind of biding their time. They're just saying, oh, Biden's a disaster. We're just going to sit here on our hands and not screw this thing up, which is a fine strategy. But they were the same people who started most of this crap, right? And many Republican, where were all the Republican governors speaking out? Where were all the Republican senators speaking out about all of these lockdowns and mandates and all this crap? It's like a handful of them. And now they want to come out and be like, oh, we were all on the right side all along. No, thank you. I don't buy any of it. C. Rose is here, says, welcome back. Thank you. The police in Ottawa are going to run the same strategy to push the protesters out that worked in Windsor. Push the protesters back, set up barriers, move along so they don't reclaim the area, use conscripted tow trucks to move the vehicles on anyone who resists. Strategy is particularly effective in the early morning hours. I don't give the Ottawa protesters more than a few days. Did you see Trudeau get roasted by Lanceman for saying the Conservative Party stands with swastikas when she is Jewish? He stormed out of that session too. We've got a runner. Looks like tyranny to me, from C. Rose. It's a good comment, C. Rose. And yeah, we'll see. We'll continue to follow it along. You know, I want everybody to be safe. I don't want people to be unnecessarily arrested. There are other ways, I think, to respond, of course. And so we've got a couple other comments in here. Heather, 3 Girly, says, Viva was there earlier before the lines was being pushed back. So the premise from Viva is that the Emergencies Act is not enacted correctly. If all these people are arrested, what's the likelihood that their cases get thrown out? The police busted down windows of these trucks and searched them. It seems like that would be some sort of recourse. Does this seem like it's more just a tactic to get people off the street versus actually making the charges stick? Yeah, 3 Girlies, we've talked a little bit about this here. Speaking from experience, when there are big, massive arrests that take place. So, for example, okay, when the Super Bowl comes to Glendale, Arizona, a lot of arrests. When we have the Waste Management Open or Barrett-Jackson, the car audio thing here in Scottsdale, or when we have spring training games, or there was a series where we had a bunch of strip clubs get raided, right, where they came in there and they sort of cited all the girls who were dancing, charged them all with various different crimes. And so we get sort of this big rush of cases come in, like 5-6 people will hire us for a bucket of crimes. And so we get a lot of experience sort of seeing how these different prosecution agencies are actually prosecuting these cases. And I can tell you that in my experience, they've been largely willing to work with us on these, okay? Saying, people kind of got caught up in a flurry, and we can sort of come to reasonable agreements about the outcome of those situations. But these were not political situations, right? The strip club was not a bunch of Trumpers, or the Super Bowl fans with a bunch of DUIs and disorderly conducts and urinating in Publix or those types of things are not a bunch of Trumpers, right? They're just sort of everyday people. These aren't politically charged situations. Whereas here, right, you've heard Trudeau. He does not think that these are just regular people. He thinks they're Nazis, insurrectionists, basically Confederates, who want to take down his country. So do you think that he's going to be, sort of willing to make deals and concessions with them? I don't know. But if he continues to get his way, I would guess not. Monster One says, I heard they're threatening to kill the dogs that belong to the protesters. The Canadian government must be in touch with the ATF here in the United States. Kareem says, Ontario plans on removing the passport on March 1. Quebec reluctantly announced it's going to let it go March 14th. Quebec initially wanted to keep it, but then said they were open to the idea of suspending it. You notice the wording they used? Since we are now in exceptional circumstances of very low cases, we can temporarily remove the passport, but when the next wave comes, we go back. You can tell they're so desperate to keep that thing. Yeah, it's true, right? We're not going to remove it. We're going to keep the mandate in place. We're just going to temporarily suspend it. so that we can just unsuspend it and put it back into place, rather than revoking it or giving up that power. We talk about it, right? If you give a government bureaucrat power, they're going to hang on to it until grim death, right? They're never going to let that go. Vientikis says, in reference to the banks, there was a convention of all the world's big bankers where they came out and said they wanted to be able to control every transaction of everyone. Can't find it right now, but also on Rumble, we've been talking about what steps to take when faced with oppression. So shout out to my Rumble people over there. We've got, let's see, Broke Bo, Yesterday's Fool, LALAHK. We've got Vientikis, of course, is there. And Dancing 21 all chatting away on our Rumble. And so shout out to Rumble. Says, I think a good guide is to network, organize, resist, and push back. What do you think? Anything to add? Well, I think, I've talked about this. I think community is very important. I think local is very important. I think that, oftentimes we get kind of too caught up in the national government and the national scheme of things. But really, I think that, if you build these robust parallel systems, you can really kind of insulate yourself in many ways from the big government, from these externalities, right? They want people to be reliant and dependent upon them, on the government for something. And if you can build a way where you kind of don't really need that, and you've kind of got things structured a certain way, you're kind of, financial freedom, you've got good community, you've got, a values-based way to connect with people, I think you're pretty strong. You're a lot stronger, right? That's why those things, they want you to stay home, put your VR headset on, watch Netflix all day, don't talk to anybody, never leave the house, because they know if people connect, man, there's not much they can do about that, as they're sort of finding out with this Freedom Trucker Convoy. Kareem says, I still don't know if my Give, Send, Go donation made it to the truckers. Is it criminal now for me to go hand out cash to those truckers? I think so. Yeah, according to Canada, yeah. You're funding terrorism, Kareem. We have Heather says, once the people are cleared out, there is nothing stopping them from coming back. They could easily regroup and return again. After all, the civil rights movement wasn't one day or a few weeks. Right. And that's kind of the point of this, right? They just, don't go to Ottawa, go to someplace else. Pick up your trucks, go someplace else, or do it again in a month. And it's like there's going to be this cat and mouse game going on and on and on again. And we'll see who ultimately, prevails on this thing. Vientikis says, how many people are just now seeing the many videos of Klaus talking at the World Economic Forum? It's the reason why Trudeau is acting like Richard Potato. Vientikis, it's too long of a comment. I'm going to have to read it and respond to it. It's just, I love you, brother, but it's just a long comment. Miss Lucky says, Sergeant Bob, do not think the cops there are not military. The optics are just not so obvious. If I were a cop there, I'd look for other employment. There are USA agencies that I bet would hire Canadian officers and could do so with the shortage of qualified workers rule. Just saying. From Miss Lucky. And I got Miss Lucky's nice card in the mail. Thank you, Miss Lucky. Sergeant Bob says, next step is Canadian and USA truckers refuse to cross the border loads. If they can withstand the financial implications, it could be very effective. We have Monster One says, my nephews both got COVID. I think that there is one of those little bastards gave it to me. All right, it's for Monster One. We've got another one from Kareem says, Justin Trudeau has been inconsistent since his first day in office. Lately, he's condemned Quebec's law because Trudeau claims that in a free country, the government has no right to tell its citizens what to put or not to put in their body. Meanwhile, he's had many Canadians fired for refusing to put something into their body. I'm Not Gas says, no offense to Sergeant Bob or former LEO, but we need to learn that the police are not our friends. Their only job is to wield violence in support of the regime. When the state is against us, the police are against us. There might be a few who stand up and do the right thing, but the vast majority will fall in line and just be following orders. I didn't say it. I'm Not Gas did, but I don't disagree. Miss Lucky says, I think you are one of the USA founding fathers who has been reincarnated. Well, I don't know about that, Miss Lucky. That's a very nice compliment, but I don't think so. No, I'm not sure about that. No, we're talking about like apples and oranges. One's sort of a nice, beautiful, polished apple. The other's like an orange that got backed over by a truck. Doesn't look so good. And so I appreciate it. It's a very nice thought. Thank you. We have Jeff Rook says, I think we're back to the age of monarchies. Kings and queens didn't negotiate with their people. They negotiated with each other, not Castro's son. The president, formerly known as Brandon, and other leaders don't see the people as people. They see them as cattle, to be used for what the farmer wants, herded where he wills, and put down when no longer useful. Frankly, I'm terrified of what it will take to make these leaders realize where they're taking the world. That's a good comment. Yeah, I agree with that, right? They don't work, they don't work for you anymore. They rule you and you do what they say. They think that way. I truly believe it. John Delar says, Trudeau just might be remembered as a dictator. I see liberals everywhere becoming what they say they hate. Nadler's Belly says, I hope the Freedom Convoy has a team of lawyers ready for when they get thrown in the DC gulag. Yeah, they're probably going to be facing some consequences there. Maybe they'll form another select committee, a Freedom Trucker Convoy. Maybe they'll impeach Donald Trump again. They probably should, actually. The select committee should probably start a new impeachment article because he's behind this whole thing, obviously. Kincaid says, good evening, Rob. It's a working theory. However, seemingly unrelated social movements have helped confuse, corrupt, and encourage bad actors. Social engineering has proliferated media and education to the point it suggests forceful brainwashing. Quantitative and qualitative data must be utilized with open debate. Otherwise, the crazy will continue. I hope everyone has a nice weekend. That's from Kincaid. Nadler's Belly, we read that one. Miss Lucky says, hats off to the truckers who seem to be the only group to stand up against totalitarian government overreach. Monster One says, is it just me or was Mike glowing? I don't remember who Mike was. That was way too long ago for me. I'm like Joe Biden. I really can't remember what happened about 10 minutes ago. Three Girlies says, hopefully the People's Convoy takes multiple routes like the I-70. And yeah, that's what's so cool about the whole strategy is the way I was thinking about it is you've sort of got this big, artery, several arteries that like run across the entire country. I-70, the I-40. We've got, all these other like tributaries, like veins or other arteries that will feed into the main artery. And so let's say, they set up a blockade at one of these junctures or one of these cities, right? Everybody's okay. Well, there's multiple other arteries that we can just reroute around and meet up in DC. And so, it's going to be a difficult thing for them to stop. We'll see. Former LEO says, what did extensive investigation discover into the National Guard deployment being rejected prior to J6? Yeah, they rejected it. Mayor Muriel Bowser, the DC mayor, sent a letter. We don't need your help. We don't want them at all. I'm Not Gas says, I challenge every Watching the Watching member to donate either 1 hour of time or 1 hour of pay to the upcoming trucker protest. Stop asking for others to take action for us. That's a good call to action from I'm Not Gas. D Mama says, I feel like the U.S. convoys would be much more successful if they went to state capitals with the strictest mandates instead of trying D.C. State capitals instead of trying D.C. Am I crazy? No, I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, I think, though, they're upset with the federal mandates. So, the federal sort of extension, the federal, Health and Human Services, the mask mandates, I think that's what they're mainly concerned about. And I think the only real entity to do that are going to be at the federal level, I would think. All right, and so let's go back to Vientikis's comment. Says, how many people are just now seeing the videos of Klaus and Schwab? It's the real reason why Trudeau is acting like a Richard Potato. If you want more hands-on experience on how the world is really won, check out the board game Imperial. In it, you can play it. And I want to pontificate a bit here. If people were to change the word, says what is happening right now is that the everlasting class war is coming to a head worldwide. Labels are the language of the oppressor. Yeah, I think that there's some truth to that. I think that there is a class warfare happening. I don't think that it's necessarily monetary, right? I don't think it's like the rich versus the poor. I think it's the rulers versus the ruled, if I had to separate them into two classes. And I don't know what that game is, Vientikis. Imperial. Sounds pretty interesting there. So go check that out if you want to read that. Let's see what else we've got here. A couple others came in from YouTube. Oh, yeah, Ray Epps was at my my undercover agent convention. Barry Cream, yes, please, is here. Says, thanks for the info for donating. Don't care if they put my name out there. Wonder what they'll say about members of the military who stand for freedom. Well, there were members of the military there in Canada, right? There were veterans who were sweeping off the snow on the snow memorial. What'd they say about them? They said that they were dishonoring the veterans. So I'm sure we'll have that same type of garbage here. Verum Est Prius says, Rob, find an interview the Robert Barnes of Canada. Is Robert Barnes the lawyer of Canada? Is he from Canada? I didn't know that. I thought he was here in the United States. Viva's Canada, I thought. Look, well, obviously I know Viva's Canada. Look 2G here with the super chat. 904 Classic Legend says, Part 1, the trucker protests are traps. It will cause even higher inflation and further supply chain issues for the middle class and poor across the U.S. Part 2, the only way to beat the mandates is not to get jabbed, not to comply, and live life normally. Worked in the 60s. Some good advice there, too, I think, from 904 Classic Legend. Well, so I would, of course, say talk to your doctor about all of those decisions. But in general, right, sort of civil disobedience or sort of peaceful noncompliance has historically been used in protest. And I think that's what 904 Classic Legend is talking about. Magdalene says, see video, protesters trampled by police horses on YouTube now. So that's great. So there's a lot, I think, going on right now in Ottawa. And so, we're going to continue to pray for everybody out there over this weekend. Back over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let's see what else we've got here. Okay. That one was from D Mama. We've got Greg Marat says, Majid Nawaz has the best show on LBC. They fired him for being an anti-vaxxer, which is such a shame. His initial coverage on the Rotherham exploit scandal was the only show that brought the scandal into the mainstream. Yeah, well, there's this concerted effort to stop people who were speaking out. Joey Bandolero is here, says, where was that, quote, majority of good cops today? Yeah, it's a good question, right? It's funny. When their jobs are on the line, when it's either you do what we say or you lose your job, they'll follow orders, right? And they did. And I would expect them to continue to. So everybody's got to be aware of that. Max Webster says, Rob, I own a construction company here in Canada. We have employees who belong to a trades union. At least in my province, the unions generally support the Liberals. I deal with business agents who represent them. And I can tell you that if they were any more left, they'd be on the right. P.S. We Canadians need help fast. Yeah. Max, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know. I don't know. And I was also, well, let's see what else we've got. Jeff Rook is here, says, dang it, this is the second time you've said almost exactly what I did in my comment before getting to the comments. Stop spying on me, Robert. That's from Jeff Rook. Well, Jeff, they say great minds think alike. Monster One says, here's the video. Oops. Let's see. Well, that video's dead. So Monster One, you shared a video link and it's dead. Error occurred. I clicked it and it's also dead. Captain Jim says, Rob, another good coverage. I don't think Trudeau and the left don't realize their policies were as damaging as the truckers' protests are purported to be. They just simply don't care. The only thing Trudeau cares about is the votes to get him power and any means necessary to stay there. He'll spout any nonsense to get power. After all, it's only his, quote, legal opinion that only stands because he's in power, right? The unfortunate and tragic thing is that there are people who believe their drivel and vote them in. Those are the folks that really need to wake up. From Captain Jim. I don't think he cares, right? I do think it's politics. Everyone's grandma is here, says, hey, Rob, I've seen so many things in my life being born in 58. I know. I have no fingertips left trying to scroll down to my date of birth. That's hilarious. Anyway, I was around for TV, PC, and the internet. With each technological improvement, the population dummied down, and here we are. I fear I'm in the last generation that knew true freedom. Have a great weekend. That's from everyone's grandma. And I think it's a good point. And look, when I talk about, the new society or, whatever sort of the next evolution of all this is going to be, I am not of the mindset that, everybody is going to be a free person. I don't think that's a reality. I think that there is a significant portion of humanity that loves being a slave. They love it. Tell me what to do. Put a mask. No, I'll do whatever you say. Happy to comply because it provides them safety and security. And, there's going to be a big portion of humanity that wants to live their lives that way indefinitely. And if those people want to go into those little, safe bubbles of Facebook or Amazon or whatever, the Google or the government, universal basic income program is, it comes with its terms and conditions and everybody goes and gets onboarded into that, right? That's fine. That's freedom. People are free to be slaves if they want to do that. But when you build parallel systems, it is sort of the escape hatch. It's the ejection seat to avoid living in those realities. And yeah, the population, right? I mean, I think you can quantify it. The CDC came out. I read a headline that they modified their sort of competency requirements for young kids. You know, it used to be like at age 3, you should know 75 words, for example. But now at age 3, it's okay if you only know 50 words. Why? Because everybody's got masks on and nobody's been to school for the last several years. So if your kid is dumber, that's okay because the standards have just been lowered. We see here, Sergeant Bob says, no offense taken, I'm not gas. I tend to agree. So there you go. Miss Lucky says from Sergeant Bob, let's go, Justin. And let's do a quick refresh and see what else we've got over here. Couple more. Social Viking says, everyone that lives in a community with mandates can protest in their community if they can't participate at the national level. The more positive pressure applied, the more the message breaks through. From Social Viking, good comment. And Heather says, youngest girly wanted to say hi. She still thinks you're the best YouTuber. Well, youngest girly, that is the nicest thing that anybody's ever said to me. Thank you for that. I'm not sure that's true, but you know, it's a nice compliment and I'll take it. I appreciate that. Thank you, 3 girlies, and shout out to all the girlies over there, all 3 of them. Hope you guys have a tremendous weekend and thank you for watching. And I think, my friends, that was it. That was the last comment, and I think that's a good one to leave off on. And so that is it for us for the day. I want to give some major shout outs to our supporter spotlight. This is the new slide that I'm introducing. If you want to be an ultra mega supporter of the show, then you're going to get a badge. You're going to get a link. You can put a logo on here. Chris Romero just signed up. And so, Chris, I'd love to hear from you if you're out there, you're supporting the show. And if you want to put a logo or a link to a charity or a link to a social media site or something like that,